In a world of 350 billion movie podcasts, two chumps have decided that now is the time for cult movies to engage in combat. Disagreements will be had, blood may be spilled, and voiceover artists most definitely will not be paid. This is Cult Film Face-Off.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Cult Film Face-Off. My name is Chet Roivers. With me as usual is Nick Leonard.
Hello there.
This episode we're going to be looking at two films directed by Walter Hill. This episode was partially inspired by the fact that the filmmaker Edgar Wright posted a list on Mubi.com of his 1,000 favourite films. And it's a really interesting list. There's a lot of, we could draw from that forever because there's so many films that I want to see, haven't seen, etc. But I saw all the Walter Hill entries, and I think there was like 4 or 5. And I saw these two, always wanted to see them. So we picked these two. But we'll start off with The Driver from 1978, and we'll be talking about Southern Comfort from 1981 afterwards. The Driver, a mysterious and enigmatic getaway driver enters into a battle of wits with the ruthless detective who will stop at nothing to take him down.
20th Century Fox presents two men on opposite sides of the law. Ryan O'Neal, Bruce Dern, and between them, Isabella Johnny. 3 loners playing a ruthless game none of them could afford to lose. In The Driver.
Right, so I assume you hadn't seen this at all?
No.
You'd heard of it though, right?
I'd heard of it, yeah, but had no context with it. Didn't know who was in it. Knew Walter Hill directed it. I went in completely vanilla.
What did you think?
Okay, it's an interesting film. What I liked about it was the fact that it's a stripped down, bare bones action atmosphere. You don't get any good context for the main characters. You don't get to know about the driver. You don't get to know about what's the motivation of Bruce Dern, who's the police guy chasing him down, and it just becomes a kind of mano a mano battle of wits between these two characters. I really enjoyed it. I liked it. First of all, let's start off with the cars and start with car chases, right? There's two sequences in particular that I thought were done especially well. There's the intro car sequence, which I think is almost lifted completely later on in Drive. Yeah. Nicholas, I always pronounce his name wrong. Amazing director. I've got a lot of time for him and love his work. Nicholas Refn, who directed Drive with Ryan Gosling. So you've got that entire sequence has been lifted and updated.
Yeah.
In reference.
Do you know Refn hadn't seen it before he made Drive?
What?
Yeah, he said in an interview he saw it after. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it is amazingly similar to the beginning.
Amazing. There's amazingly similar, and there's a scene which is
basically the same scene. Yeah. He said in an interview he'd never seen the film. He saw it afterwards. You reckon that's bullshit?
Oh, that's Porky Pies.
Thinking about it, I'm just like, because I was watching it, I was like, of course, like this is.
I couldn't have even considered while watching it that he hadn't have seen that and was influenced by that.
Is that just like Scandinavian humour?
He's quite an odd dude, Nicholas Refn.
I suppose that if you were going to pick one film to say didn't influence him, that's the one to pick, because the opening scene is the opening scene from Drive. Yeah.
It's even at the same point of the film.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah.
When there's too many similarities, you go, well, that can't be. It's often because it's got to be.
Okay, well, let's assume he's a bullshit artist.
Yeah. Laying the smack down on this podcast. And I thought it was done, and I was captivated from the off from that. Another scene which is done extremely well is when Ryan O'Neal is testing his driving credentials with the crew that have been hired by Bruce Dern, and they've got this gorgeous orange Mercedes that he basically fucks up just to show how good he is at driving. The car porn on this film is amazing. You've got that amazing orange Merc, you've got that beautiful aubergine Pontiac Firebird, you've got that really sexy red pickup truck. The cars look great. What did you think of it?
I thought it was hugely, hugely disappointing. I'd heard so much about it over the years. I think Tarantino lists it as one of his most influential films.
Yeah, he does.
It's like the coolest film in history or something like that. I mean, like I said, I don't think it's even worthwhile for Drive obsessive because... But then
you can't. I mean, Drive is a far superior film to The Driver. The Driver hasn't aged very well at all.
No, it hasn't.
It hasn't aged very well at all.
But it's also the fact that I was going to say you can't even look at it as something that inspired Drive because reference said that it didn't. But then again, I think we've just decided that that's completely untrue.
Yeah. Those are the bits that really work for me. The car chases in there were filmed and edited extremely well.
It's the same thing that we said about the car chase in To Live and Die in LA. There are so many car chases you see nowadays. There's footage of cars, and you can just hear somebody saying, "Oh, we'll fix it in the edit." So they just chop scenes together. And here, the cars that are in the car chase are very often in the same shot, so you can see that there's actually stunt drivers driving the car. So you watch your car chase. Yeah. It's a lost pleasure actually. You don't really see car chases anymore.
No, it's very visceral. You're getting shots. You're getting kind of what's going on in the rear view mirror. You're getting in actual time what's happening in drivers' POVs, and you get a real sense of speed and danger and kinetic energy in those driving scenes. Where it doesn't work so well is there's zero characterization. I mean, the thing is that you look. It's quite interesting because the whole time I was watching this film, I'm making comparisons to Drive. And I absolutely love Drive, and I was hooked from the beginning to the end of Drive. And Drive wasn't about action scenes. It was about relationships. It was about buying into that. They bring in a female character which isn't given any kind of. It's so fluffy. It's so circumstantial.
You're talking about Isabella Gianni.
Yeah. Because there's no point in her character being there. It's complete fluff. It has got one of the most tenacious switcheroo attaché case scenes of all time. I mean, that was such a stupid. The last half an hour was so stupidly done. You know, it was. I mean, you know, he's on that train hunting the guys involved in the robbery down. Yeah. There's no way he's going to be able to pick that case. He goes straight to the case that the guy in the toilet pushed out, and he locates it straight away. I mean, that's complete nonsense.
It's a nonsensical film, I think, through and through. I think one of the main problems is that if you've ever wondered why, of all like the big box office draws of the years gone by, why Ryan O'Neal isn't discussed as much as actors that were sort of around in the same era. The guy cannot act. He is made out of fucking balsa wood, and he has no presence at all. He has no. If you look at Ryan Gosling in Drive, you're always wondering what he's thinking. Who the fuck is that guy? I didn't even have any questions. I was just like, it's just some actor standing there looking like a tree. I don't really give a shit. And it goes to show that it does actually take a lot of skill and a lot of invention to create something out of very little. And
have mystique and magnetism and sex appeal. Ryan O'Neal doesn't have any of those. He just kind of looks like he's permanently a bit pissed off. It didn't work at all, and I kept thinking why. I mean, Steve McQueen would have absolutely aced it in that role.
Anybody who has a bit of presence, he has no screen presence. He's just there. He might as well be in the background. He might as well be fucking wallpaper.
Bruce Dern's got nothing to play opposite.
That's the conflict between those two. I mean, it's ridiculous. You have Bruce Dern like a really fantastic performer, and then you have Ryan O'Neal.
I love Bruce Dern in this film. Bruce Dern is brilliant. I've not ever seen him play this kind of character.
Yeah, and he
plays a great arsehole.
He's such a weasel.
Yeah, he's a weasel. The way he pours the coffee on Ryan O'Neal. You fucking shit.
He really. He just, at the end of the day, you can tell this is a 70s film because he really is. I mean, he breaks the rules and whatnot, but he's trying to take a criminal down. He should be the good guy, but you fucking hate him. You just
he's completely because he's completely bent.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But at the same time, like if you were going to pick somebody whose side you were on, it should be Bruce Dern. But they go out of their way to paint him as the most unpleasant scumbag. But then Ryan O'Neal is neither a good guy or a bad guy, or who is that guy? Is it even a guy, or is it just an actor standing there waiting to get paid?
I mean, he's given so zero. The thing is, you can give a character mystique and zero backstory, and it'd be completely captivating. What I thought was interesting about this, what I was watching this, and about halfway through it, I was like, what it really reminds me of, a far superior film on every level, is Le Samurai. I'm pretty sure I've lent you to Le Samurai, and I'm pretty sure out of the 3 times I've lent it, you've never watched it.
I don't think I still haven't got around to it.
You need to watch that film.
We'll pair it with something and we'll do it.
Maybe Le Samurai and Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai, because there's actually quite a lot of similarity. Apart from the titles, there's actually a lot of similarities in those characters.
Okay, well, that's an episode we went to.
What reminded me of the Samurai is that you've got two guys, you've got two loners who live in isolated existences. You've got Ryan O'Neill in his hotel room. You've got the Samurai living in the apartment. They've got a similar relationship with a reluctant female witness, and there's minimal dialogue spoken by the main protagonist, and they both follow a very strict code of conduct. But you've got Ryan O'Neill, who is complete fluff on screen, and you've got the Samurai, who is just captivating and so many layers with so many expressions. Ryan O'Neill doesn't have expressions.
No,
he's got one expression through the whole film, and when he's menacing, he tries to pull off menacing one-liners. You just go, I don't buy it.
Yeah, no. But I'm not even interested. If that character could somehow look as if he was making a turn and sort of becoming more ruthless...
But for me, though, you didn't know if he's going to look like he's going to burst into tears or going to be violent.
Right,
I mean, when you're looking at somebody going, well, I don't actually know if they're just going to cry or be really assertive, then I don't...
It's just, no, I completely agree with that. I mean, the thing is, the film gets off to such a good start. It's like, boom, there's that really, really well-filmed car chase. And then there's evidence, and then straight away you're in a lineup. Whack, whack, whack. It starts so fast. I thought this is going to be so fast moving, and then
it sags in the middle until then the action scenes come into play.
It basically stops. It's also again in comparison to Live and Die in LA, which we just recently spoke about. That was a film that was obsessed with the details, and this is uninterested in the details. I was watching this just thinking, what kind of arrangement is this criminal underworld? I mean, how did they bribe this woman? This woman who witnesses Ryan O'Neill in a getaway. The person who Ryan O'Neill essentially answers to says, "Oh, did you pay? Have we paid her off?" And he says, "Oh, no, I paid her off." And I was like, how does that work? You pay her off, but then someone didn't pay. It doesn't make any sense. How does this... It's all wishy-washy. It doesn't really give a shit. Ronnie Blakely is in it, who's the mother from... Nancy's mother from Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't really...
Right, yeah. I knew I recognised it for something, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
They don't really explain how any of these people interact with this or how this is a business or an organisation. It's just like, oh, there's some underworld people and they have agreements, and I was just sat there. Why? Who are they? Why do they know this? Why did this? It doesn't make any sense at all.
I thought the ending was one of the flattest endings I can remember seeing in a film.
Also, really, I mean, I did sort of laugh. Are you talking? I mean, the
final sequence?
Yeah.
It's like Bruce Dern has been spending the entire film showing very clearly how focused, how absolutely driven he is to nail this guy. And when he finally doesn't nail him, on to the next.
Yeah.
I was just there going, and then they played the most... The music that comes with the title sequence, I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, it has, but the final scene. This is obviously a massive spoiler. The final scene is Ryan O'Neill going to this locker.
We tend to do this in this podcast.
What, the drop spoilers? Yeah. Well, we should. I really should put a warning at the front.
We should maybe put in like Times New Roman 50. We're going to spoil films for people, but then we're trying to kind of save you some kind of time in choices of films that you may search out.
Exactly. Well, okay. Well, I mean, that final scene where Ryan O'Neill goes to a locker expecting to find money. I mean, anybody who's been watching the film knows that it's not going to be there. I think anybody at any point in time watching this film would realise that wasn't going to happen. But he, after glancing to sort of check that he's safe, he goes, opens the locker, realises there's no money in it, turns back exactly to where he looked probably 20 seconds later, and Bruce Dern is standing there with the entire police force. And I would just love to have seen over the shoulder of him as they tiptoe in and try and sort of present themselves in this. It's really goofy. It's a really, really outdated and goofy thing. And on a similar note, this is a completely minor thing, but there's an assassination in a hotel room where somebody's assassinated with a gun, and before the guy kills the person with the gun, he puts a pillow on their face and then shoots it. And I thought, isn't the pillow... I mean, because he just puts the pillow there and then he just shoots it like at arm's length. It's like, aren't you supposed to... Isn't that to muffle the sound of the gun?
Yeah.
So he just puts a pillow there and goes, well, I've just shot a pillow. It's like, it's supposed to stop the noise of just... Surely that's what it's for. It's slightly off... slightly off... I mean, it's a silly film, and it is a pretentious film. You know, I went in, unfortunately, with the knowledge that all of the characters are called the driver... the mark. It basically, I was watching it knowing what the characters were called. They're called who they are, And I was expecting that to be there would be Mr. X involved.
The cowboy.
Yeah, it's just like this is what happened. It's like mapping the film.
It's trying to kind of imitate stuff that's French New Wave and neo noir.
But there's
nothing. There's no gravitas in what is happening on screen.
You never see a relationship depicted and think, oh, I wonder what's really going on. You're just like, oh, that's that person, that's that person. I don't.
The positives in this film that I enjoyed were I thought the car scenes were done extremely well. I thought Bruce Dern was great.
It was great, yeah.
The rest of it.
It's empty.
It's weak.
Yeah, it's really empty. But you enjoyed it.
Did I enjoy it? I enjoyed elements of it. Yeah, I mean, I do. 70. I thought the way it was shot. You got a lot of. It's a lot of kind of. There's a lot of blue filters. There's kind of LA in the 70s griminess. It looked really good. The car chases were done and shot and cut really well, with a lot of kinetic energy.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed those pieces, but I couldn't sit. I wouldn't sit. There's nothing more I'd get from sitting down through it again.
No, it is completely empty. I was watching it thinking, why is Walter Hill not interested in depicting how these characters relate to each other in any way, shape, or form? He's more interested in depicting people just sort of brooding, as if we're supposed to take something. I mean, if it was the success of this film could completely change if anyone other than Ryan O'Neal was in the lead role. I think it could enliven it completely because the fact that
I think it would do a lot because then Bruce Dern had someone to play
off again, yeah,
and he hasn't got that at all.
Yeah.
And there's not any other story elements that are going on. You're not given anything about Ryan O'Neal's character in terms of he charges that amount of money, but you don't see what he's not living some sort of lifestyle. He's kind of wearing a lot of the same clothes throughout the whole film. He's got this pensive pissed offness, but you're never given any kind of rationale of why he's got that. There's no heart to that character at all. I mean, which is completely different. The mirror opposite to Ryan Gosling's character, who has got compassion, who just needs that cajoled him out of with the female character, with that interest. Right. You got. He doesn't say a lot, but conveys so much, and has got so many layers to that character. Whereas Ryan O'Neal didn't have the chops to pull that off.
I just didn't. I honestly didn't care. The film started, and I just thought, who is this guy? He looks like Mr. Universe or something, like very pretty. I mean, not muscular or anything, but he looks like the kind of guy you see standing on stage. Well,
he looks like someone who should be doing, like a brew. He looks like somebody who should be doing a 1970s Brute Aquatonic ad.
Yeah, right.
He's one of those vapid like Aramis ads or something. That's what he looks like. Well coiffed hair, good looking, but completely vapid.
Just no. That's the thing. No presence on screen. It's just I was almost looking straight through him at a certain point. So I think it's a really empty film. Have you read Roger Ebert's review of this?
No.
It's one of my new favourite reviews of his. There are times when he reviews, like, can you give him 2 stars or 2.5 stars, where he gives it a decent amount of praise, but he is pretty brutal about the things that he didn't like, and it's just a great read.
Okay.
But
what was his take on Ryan O'Neal?
I don't think he mentioned Ryan O'Neal. He was more offended by the. He had a very sort of. Ebert is in a strange way more brutal when he's talking about like films that he doesn't completely hate. So he kind of cuts to the heart of it by saying that it is just empty pretension to name these characters because there's nothing there. If they were called the Mark, the Driver, and there was something that they were misdirects or you were supposed to uncover stuff for yourself, that would be something. But it's just like everyone plays to their role and then the film stops, and I just thought I don't really know that there's nothing especially interesting, artistic, anything about that. So I really didn't like it. It was a terrible disappointment, I thought.
So you just not you. It really
it just annoyed me. I just thought this isn't about anything. I'm watching things happen, and it's completely fantasy.
But it's not about plot. It's about atmosphere, and it's about action sequences, and that's what it does well.
There has to be more than because there's not a lot of action in it. There's 2 very very strong actions. Actually, I'd say probably 3.
There's 3 sequences. There's 3 car chase sequences in it. And they vary from being sort of like 3 minutes in length to about sort of 6 or 7 minutes, which is the final chase in the red pickup truck.
Yeah, right.
That are done really well. Great car chases. A whole film does not make a complete film. No. But my thing is that I didn't have any expectations of it. I didn't go in there with expectations because I didn't know anything about it.
I didn't know much about it. All I wanted was a story.
What I took away from it is what it did well was the car chase sequences. But I wouldn't watch it again. I'm not going to get anything more from it on a second view. Bruce Dern, I love Bruce Dern.
Yeah, and he's great in this.
So there is stuff that's done well, but it's not as great as the sum of its parts.
I just wish it was honest about being a genre film. It's not.
It has illusions of being a pretentious art house film, which is ridiculous because you can do the way he sets up the camera. And there's a sequence where Bruce Dern, and the thing is, Bruce Dern gets you through that sequence because he's very captivating. But basically, it's a very straight conversation about him wanting to turn the other guys a bit bent. But the sequence lasts about 6 minutes. They walk down. It's very carefully filmed down a very narrow alleyway.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Really lovely looking.
And it's
shot.
just kind of like they've got illusions that this is like an art house. They're really they're going deep into.
But there's that.
And they're not, because those guys that he's working with are complete 2D. They don't get any characterisation at all. The guys that he wants in on his plan have got no characterisation whatsoever. And there is nothing. There's no flashbacks. There's no context of the characters in this film, and that's where it slips.
And almost everything that they say is what they mean. So all of the drama is derived from the dialogue. There's no depth to anyone. It's just an empty film. I actually, the more I think about it, the less I like it. Look nice.
Yeah.
Bruce Dern's great. That's about all.
And the car scenes were done really well.
They were done really well. I mean, I think that's fair to say as well. Did you notice that in the opening scene? The opening chase, that one of the criminals who's in the back seat, I kept noticing him just gurning in the most hilarious way, like, oh god, like I'm totally scared. I couldn't tell whether he was deliberately taking the piss or whether his sort of expression for fear is just...
I didn't get that.
And then the more I looked at him, I thought, who is that guy? And he's one of the most prolific stuntmen in Hollywood history. I recognised him because he's the barman in Out for Justice, the Steven Seagal film. He's like an old boxer and he takes a swing at him. You haven't seen Out for Justice? No. Oh, we got to do an episode on Out for Justice. That's an underrated film. But yeah, sorry, I thought you'd know who I was talking about. In that case, never mind. That was The Driver. We are now going to move on to 1981's Southern Comfort, in which a ragtag group of National Guardsmen on a routine weekend exercise fall foul of the locals in a Louisiana backwater and are soon fighting to escape and stay alive. Southern Comfort.
It will show you as much about survival as deliverance, as much about human courage as Midnight Express, as much about armed conflict as Apocalypse Now. The bayous of Louisiana, the home of a little understood group of Americans. They're a peaceful people as long as they're left alone. The National Guard on weekend maneuvers. In 48 hours, they'll be home with their families. There's only one problem.
Wheel you back in here. This is our home.
They've crossed a boundary into a territory where they don't belong.
We ran into some people that are real weird, and I think maybe they're trying to kill us.
They've violated laws they never knew existed.
Somebody figure out where the hell we're going and do it quick. Gotta go east to go north. Hell, that damn thing.
And the farther they go, the closer they get to nowhere.
I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna fight my way out of here.
Southern Comfort. It's the land of hospitality, unless you don't belong there.
Okay, so Southern Comfort. I had not seen this film before. Had you?
Hadn't seen it. I'd never heard of it.
You'd never heard of it?
No.
Really? Okay, I'd heard of it just because I remember seeing it. Sky Movies used to do this thing. They did it very briefly where on like a Monday night they'd say, do you want to watch Southern Comfort or do you want to watch Platoon? Phone now. And I voted for Southern Comfort thinking I've never seen that film. And then I tuned in and it was Platoon and I was pissed off because I'd already seen Platoon. But I had heard of it. What did you make of it?
It's an interesting film.
Yeah. It's
an interesting film because as soon as it starts off and you see infantry, you're like, okay, right, is this going to be NAM? Is it going to be, where are these guys? Where are these guys going to be posted? And who are these guys? They're the National Guard.
Yeah.
When you think of the National Guard, I think of Dad's Army.
Yeah, right.
It starts and there's a very stock list of character types that you're introduced to. You've got the young reckless soldier, you've got the nutbag, you've got the coward. You're never told what they're actually doing. Do you know what they're actually doing there?
It just seemed like a fairly straightforward exercise where they had to get from one point to another. I just thought that it was just a straightforward...
That's what I got to get from one point.
Yeah.
But that was the mission.
Yeah, just...
Why couldn't they have flown over there in a helicopter?
No, I mean, it's familiarising yourself with the terrain and sort of, preparing them for warfare, I thought. I mean, it didn't seem like a complicated mission, but it seemed like the kind of thing that I suppose the National Guard might have done. Do you not think?
Well, yeah. I just thought it was a bit, just get from one point to another point. No, we've had troubles.
Very, but very dangerous, difficult terrain. I thought it was more about, it is an exercise.
Yeah.
A day or two in the backwoods of Louisiana.
Okay. What I really thought that Louisiana as a location was a really interesting location to be shot in. I thought it was shot beautifully.
Yeah.
The swamplands looked beautiful. They were effectively very haunting. Yeah. What did you think of it?
I actually liked it quite a bit. As soon as it began, I thought this is much more recognisably a film than The Driver was. Even just the fact that the credits rolled over footage of the Louisiana swamplands. They give you a perfect sense of where you are. You said I didn't even realise The Driver was set in Los Angeles. Is that where it was set? I didn't even realise because you never really get a sense of place. It's just that might admittedly have been the point in that situation. But as a story, I just thought. Whereas there was no plot in The Driver, this was all plot. And I had a lot of time for the fact that those characters were fucked from the beginning. The film has barely started, and there's no, they're completely screwed. There's no surprise sort of reveals of things that might help them. There's no bluffs. There's this, I forget what the name of this thing is, that Shane Black, the guy who wrote... The Nice Guys, Predator, Lethal Weapon, etc. He didn't write Predator, sorry, he was in Predator. He talked I had an interview with him. He says that there's this system where somebody will mention something, and then towards the end of the film, it will pay off. And that so and so's got a lighter hidden in his pocket, and that gets them out of trouble. Yeah, but that happens so prevalently in drama nowadays, especially on TV. You'll be introduced to something, and you're subconsciously supposed to think that it's something that's not important, and then it comes back in. Okay, that makes perfect sense. There was none of that. There was Fred Ward smuggled in ammunition. As soon as you're aware that that's happened, you're told straight away. There's no bluffs. They are screwed, and the only way they get out of it, if they indeed do get out of it, is it happens completely organically and without any tricks. And I thought that was quite refreshing, because the movie just strips them of everything. They lose the radio immediately. They lose their most decorated soldier immediately. They lose their map.
Well, they don't have a compass.
That's right.
How no one in this infantry packs. I mean, you're talking about Boy Scouts pack compasses.
Yeah, right.
How the National Guard? How have 8 guys in the National Guard not got a compass between them?
Well, they're more interested in having sex with prostitutes at the other end of the thing.
They're firing blanks.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of they're a goofy bunch of people anyway. But I thought it was a great setup because it's just that they're completely.
But it sets them up to getting a massive kind of payback, because they're arseholes from the off. I mean, as soon as they start cutting the nets, they commandeer those bows.
Yeah.
You know that they're heading for quite a fall. How it started for me, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to kind of lock in to this film as kind of, right, is this going to be taken quite a serious thriller kind of? What I think it actually ends up being is a massive genre. It's a massively generic genre film, which is extremely over the top. I mean, every single death in this film is done amazingly over the top. Goggle-eyed, slow motion, completely over-stylised. And when I realised that is obviously the flavour of this film is going to be like that, I kind of embraced it. Like, okay, so we're not going to be like, the first kill where their superior is taken down. I was like, oh shit, are we going to get into a kind of a Deliverance kind of thing of like, they're getting, hunted by these guys who know that terrain so well. And what it actually becomes for me is that each death is more goofier and more goggly-eyed and more over the top than the next one. And I was like, fine, it's going down that path. So I didn't think it was going to be like that. Looking at the first 25 minutes of the film.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was most interesting about it is it's like completely and utterly a horror film. The way it's shot, the way you never see their assailants ever. I mean, the first time you see them when they're on the canoes, it's from their point of view, and you can just see vague figures.
You're only teased.
Yeah. You never. It's almost like it's the shark in Jaws. You don't see them, and there's also the old school the way that it sort of ends up. They end up back in the spider's nest. Is that the phrase? What am I thinking of?
I think spider's nest.
Viper's nest.
Viper's nest.
But it's that. It's like Eden Lake or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where you think
they're back with everybody.
Exactly. They think
you don't know whether they're going to be. Oh, these guys seem like the really friendly side of this group of of Cajuns. Yeah. I really enjoyed that last 20 minutes, how that unfolded, how that was cut with the traditional Cajun music, and are they going to be really nice to them, or are they going to hang them up like pigs?
Yeah.
And you don't know which way it's going to go. And I thought that the way that was paced, when those hunters come back and return, you go, oh fuck, they are up fucking shit creek.
Yeah, the funny thing is that I watched it with a friend, and the whole time that scene was playing, it was like, why aren't they just trying to get out? I was like, well, because they think they're safe. It's like, well, they're not safe. They're still in this, but they're with hundreds of people.
If they suddenly bolt off like that, they're going to cause themselves more.
But it's also the fact that you do feel safety when you're in a community. It's like it would be completely bizarre if those hunters.
They're all being extremely nice and offering them beers and saying they should chill out rather than go to the next town.
Yeah, but in any situation, you'd be like, okay. Well,
you want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a minority of hunters, not the whole of the Cajun community.
Exactly.
I really liked Brian James cropping up as one of the local one-armed Māori Cajuns. And what I like especially is that when he finally spoke, his Cajun accent kept slipping into Caribbean.
I didn't notice that. The thing is,
I was slapping my knee.
Considering Brian James is such a recognisable face, when he appeared, I didn't recognise him at first.
I did as soon as he came on screen, I recognised him.
I didn't recognise him. I probably took maybe 5 minutes. But also, I thought he speaks initially only in French. I thought.
La Ban.
Yeah, I thought it was actually relatively convincing. As soon as he had to speak in English but with a French accent, it reminded me of his turn as a Cockney villain in Tango and Cash, saying one of the worst accents of all time. But until then, I thought he was actually his accent was pretty good.
But he conveys a lot of expression, and he's got a lot of expression in that face, wide-eyed, and no, I really liked him. I liked him propping up, and you should really watch that for the Caribbean accent. The soundtrack is worth mentioning. There's a superb slide guitar soundtrack throughout the film, which I really liked.
Oh yeah, no, I think I definitely recognise that too. I also like the soundtrack in The Driver in the beginning.
Oh,
garbled strings and stuff.
I can't believe I didn't mention that. The soundtrack was Philip Glass, and I really like the isolated echoed chambered trumpets and the synth notes to heighten the tension. The soundtrack was brilliant in The Driver. It's funny that we've got another film with one of the Carradines in. What did you think of his performance?
It's funny because it's Keith Carradine.
It's Keith Carradine.
I was watching it thinking, because I remember when we talked about the duelists, you said you described him as smug, and I was like, he
can't get away from it.
I was just like, he is one smug.
Mate, smarmy is a stinky cologne, and he cannot shake it.
It was so odd because there's one point. Actually, I think this is a strength of the film. There's one scene where they try and decide who's going to effectively be the leader after their leader gets off, and it falls at the feet of Carradine. And I just think, I mean, his shtick is being smug, and I just thought, Nobody, they wouldn't pick him. I'd pick Fred Ward. Fred Ward, who smuggled in the live ammunition that saves them multiple times. Admittedly, that's paranoid. It's against the rules. Whatever. I'd pick him.
Yeah, but he gets a pretty raw deal in the fact that he's just like, I'm not sharing any of my ammo with anybody else. That's not going to make you the most popular man in class. Sorry, guy. You can all have dummy ammo. I'm the only one who's going to have real ammo. What I thought was done really which was very. There's a turning point of the film where I took it from being like a serious kind of thriller to there's going to be lashings of dumbness in this film. Is the character who's called Coach, when he does his flipping out, and it's like, we need to have an explosion in this film.
Oh, right.
And we really need to have an explosion, and this is what needs to happen. I was like, it was so stupid, and he paints a cross on himself, and then he goes mental. And the thing is, it's conveniently he goes mental, but he can be controlled by tying a rope around his waist. He led around for the entire film quite happily.
Yeah, that's daft. Yeah. The only other time I thought it was very, very Hollywood is towards the end. They're basically sprinting through an area of woodland, they keep
making themselves. Sorry to interrupt. But I get. I mean, it's proper dumb. Is that they make themselves known the whole time when they have kind of a plan of what we're going to do here. I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to walk 50 metres and fire 2 rounds every time. It's like they attract attention to themselves the whole time. Yeah. There's no slickness in their manoeuvres.
Right. But then they are. I don't think they're supposed to be the smartest men in history anyway.
But some of them have actually been in the army before. They
some of them have, but some of them blatantly haven't. There's a discussion where one of them said, "Oh, I did it."
But none of them come across like they've ever been in the army. They come across as so territorial army.
Yeah. And the other thing that I thought was very Hollywood is there's a scene towards the end where it's like an action scene where they're surrounded and they basically sprint away.
The trees.
Yeah.
Oh God. I was laughing. I was laughing at that. I was laughing at the tree sequence.
How on earth?
No one can coordinate trees falling down. There's only 3 of them. There's only 3 of those Cajuns that are out there.
But they had all of these trees ready hacked into so they could kick them over, and then they were just falling into. I mean, that was really stupid.
It came off as comedic.
Especially in this day and age, it does. But I think that. This is the kind of film that's kind of undervalued, and the fact that the characters are so simple, that's all they need to be. I was interested immediately. I mean, like when they were picking a leader, and I was just like, don't pick fucking Carradine, pick, the fact that I was that engaged in that discussion, it says a lot about the film and how it works. It doesn't feel, it's not like The Driver where it feels the need to have some kind of sort of pretentious angle to it.
But there's not even stock characters in The Driver.
I don't. Yeah, exactly. I don't. I mean, there's not.
It's so highfalutin. It's like, the cowboy. No, they don't even have tropes. Whereas this has got very solid. It's very much a genre film. Yeah. But there's more to it than just saying it's a genre film, because it's an interesting film and it's got some some really interesting actors in there.
Yeah. For real, it's a really really good cast. I mean, even Carradine, who's as a presence on screen, I don't understand, because he is a smarmy. I look at him and I'm just like, you'd never be in the Louisiana backwoods on a fucking exercise with the fucking National Guard. There's no way in the world. He is an actor through and through. But at least he has a thing. Ryan O'Neill doesn't have anything.
Well, no, he doesn't have anything. No, he's fluff.
Yeah, he is fluff.
He's blonde fluff. The exchanges of dialogue, everything is who can be more macho than the other guy.
Yeah,
who can be more like, that's not affecting my frame of mind.
Yeah, but that's...
what do we do to that guy? Put him in a cage or kill him? Either one sounds good to me.
I think that's kind of perfect, because so much of what happens to them is because they can't communicate with each other. They're these macho personas that they are completely unable to communicate.
Well, they don't. There's no teamwork in it.
No, of course not. It's just
everybody is out for themselves, and they are completely inept at working, because everybody thinks they should be leading the platoon. Once that Purple Heart gets clocked in the beginning, it's like it's a scramble of who's going to lead them.
There is an inevitability to what happens, but I didn't find. I mean, I was fully engaged. And I really, it's a tiny detail, but I really like the fact that there's obviously several shots of them walking. In the beginning, they walk like they're sort of in the army. And as the film gets on, like there's a shot towards the end where they just like people who are half dead ambling towards their death. They're just marching along like they've completely succumbed to what's happening to them. And the thing about it being a horror film, do you remember the scene with the dogs? That was quite badly staged and it wasn't perfect, but the way that they're hidden...
The build-up to the dogs coming.
Yeah.
And the fact one of the guys like, it's a positive, there's hunters so we can follow the hunters.
Yeah, exactly right.
And how that flips. It builds dread well. It successfully creates suspense. And never more so in the last 25 minutes when they're on that ride and they get ridden back into that town and you've got all the kind of, the inbred Cajuns playing their songs and everything. You're like, how's it going to unravel here? I was really bought into those two. What's going to happen to those two?
Yeah, right. Which is way more than I cared about.
Oh, the drama, yeah. Let's get on to. I don't think we need to. I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion of what we've talked about thus far. But out of those two, which is the victor?
Just to briefly pick up on something you just said, there is genuine suspense in Southern Comfort. The Driver is ostensibly a thriller. There's no suspense in it.
With action sequences. No, there's no suspense. There's action sequences.
But there is no suspense in it. I think Southern Comfort it's better made. It's more engaging. It's completely unpretentious. It's a film I would recommend. I think it is interesting.
I think I would say to people to search it out. It's a little unforgotten. It's a little unforgotten gem.
It's a forgotten.
It's an unforgotten gem. It's a totally forgotten gem that I'd never heard of, and I enjoyed watching.
In that sort of pantheon of sort of men on a very, very macho men on a mission movies, even stuff like Predator, which there are films that I think, if not directly inspired by, they have the same DNA. This is one of those movies. The fact that it's not still in the discussion like those is very odd. I truly enjoyed Southern Comfort. There's a lot to like. The Driver I didn't, so I go with Southern Comfort.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
I concur.
Okay, well that's that. Thank you very much for listening. We are on Twitter, Facebook, etc. We're also on YouTube, so check us out. Also, you can email us on cultfilmfaceoff@gmail.com if you have any suggestions for episodes or any correspondence of any kind.
We would love to hear them. Thank you very much for tuning in, and catch you on the flip.
Take it easy.
Cult Film Face-Off.
Hold up. Everybody take 5. I'm gonna go get a bearing.
What? We don't have a compass, remember?
You ever hear of taking a reading off the sun, Spencer?
Sure. Rises in the east, sets in the west. Interstate's north. If you ask me, that's not where we're headed, so why don't you go read the sun, Casper?